life-changing products, advertising it everywhere with catchy slogans, flashing pictures, saying that if you buy this drug today, you'll be absolutely cured of whatever sickness you have, pushing you to buy this product to cure your sickness, not even knowing if it's actually helping or not. Warnings may apply, may actually be printed at the very bottom with a size 10 font, and it doesn't really, and it shows just how they want to advertise their product and not actually help the people, in which the pharmaceuticals are very obliged to do, right? The framing in this debate is simple. This debate is whether or not banning advertisements for pharmaceuticals brings more good or bad, right? So the weighing should be straightforward. If we can prove to you that the banning is crucial and the government is the only one that can do this, and these advertisements are very predatory and harmful towards the people, and why the government needs to do this, then we win today's debate, right? With that said, let's set up the debate first. Obviously, the house that we are talking about in this motion is the government. They're the only one that can impose bans statewide and can be listened with real consequences, right? This links with our module, several points on our mechanism, right? What this ban is going to look like. There's 4 points on this. First point on it's in the form of legislations that's going to be socialized to the masses so that big pharma knows not to do this, or else their license will be revoked, thus cannot produce drugs anymore, and the ban will also be publicized so that people know not to buy it, not to report if they see any advertisements that is happening from these big farmers, right? Now, we're not going to do fines, as we think that fines still allow for advertising to be done. And these companies are rich enough to pay off the fine and keep doing the same thing. This also means that advertising platforms also have the obligation to refuse to display these ads, right? Second point on what kinds of ads and what kinds of drugs that are advertised. It could be posters, 30-second clips on TV, social media, or even endorsements by influencers like Rachel Venya telling you to buy a 300K jar of Blackmore vitamins. This shift towards societal perspective to make these drugs appealing, to make vitamins something that gives you healthy lifestyle, and thinking and taking the focus away from actually getting it organically through exercising, eating your vegetables because you're octingent on vitamins, and think that the and think that it's the key to looking like Rachel Vanya with her glowing skin and all that, instead of trying to actually consult your problems with a real doctor who knows what they're doing, and not self diagnosing and all that, right? Now, what kind of drugs are in the market right now? That are being advertised over the counter, they're still dangerous because advertising leads you to buy wanting more because it's a capitalistic tactic. You will overuse just because the counter doesn't mean doesn't just because it's over the counter doesn't mean that they don't have a fatal enough dose that could actually be used accordingly, right? Fourth point, last point then, on we're not going to ban the word of mouth of ads like your mom telling you to buy Panadol, because this is not a capitalist motivated advertising. They don't even mean to advertise it. They just want to make sure you get in the better condition, and how the government will not be able to monitor this as well. If the negative proposes this burden to us, we say that we're not going to create a 1984 world where your speech will be recorded 24/7, right? We're also going to ask media posted by social movements uh, to be taken down for like these advertisements, and we're going to do the ban was defined as pharmaceuticals as that is more inclusive and fair definition applicable, especially with psychiatrists and researchers who have seen the real impacts of mass spread pharma ads, as well as a pre-sequent check and balances to ensure that the government is not running their own definitions, which leads to more misuse of power and unjustified ban that will instead harm citizens who need these drugs, and most people will agree with this as well, right? Also, to preempt their argument on the uh, negative, on saying that you need more awareness that corporates have to promote their own products, we see there's no urgency to mobilize people to seek out drugs like paracetamol, because we're not debating in a vacuum. The majority already knows, right? Now, going into my arguments, then I have two arguments in my speech today. First of all, on why pharmaceutical advertising is bad, and second, why banning is good and why the government has to do it, right? Going to my first argument then on why pharmaceutical advertising is bad. The premise here is simple. Pharmaceuticals are, like any other industries, are very profit oriented. However, unlike any other industries, the products that they sell are very delicate. They're drugs that can literally change how your body works. There's vitamins will change how your immune system literally on whatever sickness that appears, or these drugs will actually can actually modify your own body to make sure that you can fight off some kind of infection and all that, right? These are very delicate. They're drugs that can literally change your body and how it works. These days, they will actually advertise a lot, right? And this a lot means it's not just one or two things like going into the TV or having posters posted everywhere, but it's big banners, influencers, and all that. And we're not just limiting it towards drugs that are just for people who are sick, but also for people who are healthy. For example, like advertising vitamins or drinking things that are saying that, oh, this will help your skin, this will help your body and all that. That's actually a part of the drugs that the pharmaceuticals are trying to endorse, right? How the advertisements look like are very harmful. They're simple, they're eye-catching, they're interesting, and most importantly, they're short. They only fit a bare minimum of information, and they use tactics like over exaggerating and guilt tripping, which some do. We agree that some do have warnings, but it's not prominent because they're trying to sell this product. They're not trying to scare off potential customers, right? And because these advertisements are very short and simple, and this eye-catching flashing lights everywhere, this is very dangerous because these are drugs. These are something that needs to be handled delicately. So when you only can put a short amount of information, which most advertisements do to make sure that it's eye-catching enough for these people to actually see, it's it only fits a bare minimum of information, and it doesn't help the people in actually understanding that these drugs contains this unless they actually buy it for themselves, right? The outcome here is really dangerous. For example, the misuse and misconception. They think that, oh, if I drink this medicine, then I'm going to be healthy, or if I drink this vitamin, I'm going to be really pretty, or all that, right? The public is aware of the meds, but they do not know what it is for and why it is actually helping them or not, because these advertisements are just saying the things that they want to hear, or what these pharmaceuticals want people to see, right? It's going to and advertising for it is really dangerous. And if we let pharmaceuticals handling a very delicate product to monetize it, it's targeting unaware consumers who don't know what these pharmaceuticals are actually going for, right? Second argument on why banning is good and why the government has to do it. Why this is so bad to the point that the government has to intervene. The government has the responsibility to just protect the citizens. It has these ads are going pushing for misinformation, the lack of education, and normalization of unknowing substances, abuse, creating bigger burden to the government's health expenditure, illnesses getting worse, more money to spend on BPJS, and having to deal with mutated viruses and bacteria, whereas that money could have been used for better innovation, increasing subsidies to make healthcare more accessible for the people. This is very dangerous, and the government really has to intervene to the point that they have to ban these, right? So we're so proud to be affirmative.
All right, thank you for that fine speech. And to open the case for side negative, I'd like to call upon the first negative speaker here.
Setting up my personal timer. Hold on. Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels, under our side, we believe that banning a mechanism that are the key for improvement in pharmaceuticals and how the market are needed, then we will accept the trade-off. Now, before I start onto my arguments, I would actually like to give a few rebuttals on propositions cases, but before that, I would like to give a few points of setups. Firstly, how in the status quo, the moment that we start to accept like trades, investment, and like the free market, it is the solution towards growth, right? Like let's take a look. For example, in China, just in span of like 100 years, it has rapidly changed its economy and become one of the biggest international financial stakeholders. This can happen because by advertising and engaging towards the profit for pharmaceutical, not only does it, for example, decrease COVID, but it also pushes China to compete within their market and make they have even better order to like be the priority choice within the consumers. But then let's talk about the interest of consumers, right? We say that one, transparency is what they need and we need it urgently. Understand that when a new drug, for example, is released, then companies need to evaluate the drug according to the feedbacks of the consumers. The only way to do that is by advertising. The more people opt into these products, the more cycle it has, because tangibly consumers do give, for example, like reviews on like how effective is the drug itself, and they need a clear update on what are they consuming. And now secondly, let's see pharmaceutical advertising characterization, right? We think that they provide accurate, professionally checked, and up-to-date information about pharmaceutical product or like advancement in pharmaceutical world. So pharmaceutical companies invest billions and billions of dollars, for example, in creating new treatments and like researching diseases and developments. And the way that they will get the profit out of like the ads and like how they what they need to sell those medicine is to be able to reinvest towards those developments, right? And consumers are not all of them are accessible to medical innovation, especially if it's only through, for example, scientific paper. So a way to like affect consumer awareness is through ads, especially because like government said that they are packed in a way that is like so flashy and like bright lights, because it is a way that the public can digest and is attention grabbing. Now a short preemptive how there may be like misleading advertisements and like over prescription, but let's not forget that there are still like regulations, and there is still like the ministry, for example, that can oversight, and there are also consumers, for example, that are doctors or people in medical fields that can point out like their flaws, and this can ensure accurate and transparent ad. This is why we oppose this motion, because we want a properly regulated and promoting awareness so that it can drive towards more innovation and better market in the pharmaceutical world instead of just banning, because we still want public health education. Now again, before my argument, I would like to give a short rebuttal on how one of their biggest case is just how the ads are just catchy slogans and flashy lights and the warnings being too small. But exactly that those attention grabbing like tactics is how they can like pack the hard to digest information into the public, especially like those like people in rural areas. Then it's not likely for them to read, like for example, medical journals just so they can know what is the newest invention in medicine, right? And like those flashy lights is how we as humans are able to capture attention. So if we want better oversight and like better informationing or something, but it is not worth it to like take down the whole ban just because we want like better information. And we also about how the warnings are being too small. Let's not forget the real concern is not just about like adding more warnings to a product. We just want to ensure that these warnings are impactful enough. If the warning is like buried in like small print or like overshadowed by flashy advertisement, that it is the issue of invisibility, not the issue of the content itself. This is why we need to make sure there is better like information regulation, not meaning that we have to erase ads as a whole. Now, why do we not want to erase ads as a whole? Jumping into my first argument on why it is not principally justified to ban pharmaceutical advertising. The whole point of medicine is we want to proliferate the development of humans, right? So why would you even ban this? Because by advertising, then people will know the progress of the pharmaceutical world, for example. This is true, like modern medicine advances super fast, right? Especially with now modern technologies and how there are more people in medical fields. So new innovations is very can be hard to digest by the public. For example, like in the COVID vaccine, people, especially those with no like good education in public health, then they are scared of it in the beginning, but with the help of like public advertising and like public figures helping with the advertising, it can help them be more open towards those new things. And by educating people on like these treatment options, then it will encourage people to want to make sure that they have this active role towards their own personal health. In comparative, they government side will need a new way of communicating towards their consumers that are still easily digestible but also regulated clearly. And without advertising under their world, people will, like for example, rely to going to the apothec in person for information. But this is hard because like hospitals and apothec are scarce in most places, like in rural areas, right? Especially even if there are apothec in those rural areas, it's not always up to date. And if they rely on like online sources instead of like advertise, then it is even more not credible. Lastly, on my second argument, let's see on how the comparative. In the long term, we will give more information because not only the awareness creates support, but also the ads create revenue where then they can reinvest towards creating better like regulations, for example, or maybe even better like research for the long run. Worst case scenario, like even if some ads like mislead or uh, it's not sesuai with the regulatory with the but it is still somehow published, then there are such thing, for example, like social media, where people will be able to preach out if there is like a mislead, like we see in TikToks, for example, if there is a makeup that is not as good as how it is in the ad, or maybe it is actually dangerous, then people can point that out. And that is a way that people can not only communicate with each other but also communicate with the company. We want to address the flaws in regulation of ads instead of cutting it off completely. Vote for public health, vote for negative.
Thank you for that fine speech. Now to continue the case for affirmative, I'd like to call upon second affirmative. Here.
Hi, please just like give me a minute. It will be quick. Okay,
Second
assuming that
affirmative.
my voice is audible, right?
Yep.
Okay. Start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Imagine a world where medicine, the essence of healing and hope, is no longer about saving lives of its people, but it is about selling illusions. This is what exactly happening under the status quo, right? That we exactly affirmative have already characterized at the very first place that these pharma companies are very evil and money oriented, and negative never even neglect this at the very first place. Characterization never actually been tackled down from the very first of the day. We win this debate easily, right? But before moving to my substantive, few rebuttals first. First point, regarding transparency and information is needed. A, regarding advertising is the only way to get transparency. No, that's not true. What transparency exactly? Open your eyes that advertisement are just attention grabbing, and it's not so that people can actually get those information. No, these are actually how the way they are selling that product. At the best, people will actually be aware of this drug is for this, not what they actually need it or not, what side effects, and how the drug has some sort of trade-off. They don't actually deny that these ads are actually eye-catching because they want to buy for their product. Pharmaceuticals are actually who are like the just like any other industries, that they are profit oriented, not giving out information. But B, not to mention that ads are actually going to be more likely on how it is very short but eye-catchy, meaning that there are no actually information given on how these products are actually going to be affecting you. But C, you cannot actually simply reevaluate drugs that you're consuming are going to be by advertisement itself, right? Exactly, not because negative site never gives step-by-step crystal explanation on how this would happen, but we also see no likelihood at all on how these two things actually could happen. Advertisement is just promoting your product. It does not work two ways within the consumer and pharma, meaning that consumer cannot submit feedbacks anyway, meaning that they cannot reevaluate it anyway, right? But see, we think that the vulnerable actor under this debate is not the pharma. We think that it is the people who are unaware because they are not professional. We are not talking about the doctor being the consumers. We are debating under that vacuum, right? But second point then, regarding how erasing is not justified. Regarding because it is the education of its people. Advertisement by evil company does not count as education because you are spreading things that are most likely to be misinformation anyway, because you are spreading things that is most likely are going to be actually making people addicted anyway. We don't see how this is an education because you're just saying that, oh, our product is good, buy our product because we have these kind of diseases, which people don't actually have those in-depth explanation on how these are actually going to affect them, right? But B, we think that information still exists anyway under our side of the house because the characterization of people are to survive. The moment they are sick, the moment they are actually feeling those kind of diseases, they are going to go towards the doctor anyway, toward the pharmacy anyway, to actually ask what is actually happening with me. And we think that it is better under our side of the house because they are actually being given those kind of information from the professional anyway. But see, regarding on how they say that these information are harmful in rural areas, for example, because it's not up to date, those kind of things are actually not going to be happen anyway because those people take years to pursue health education. We think that they know the best on what they're actually doing right now. They are having those moral obligation on how they have to keep these people healthy, meaning that they are actually still going to pursue education that is infinity anyway. This is so unlikely for them to not know what they are doing because they're actually pursuing in these type of fields, meaning that they're actually going to be the one that is know this one the most rather than just random people at those because of those advertisement, in which actually leading into more assumption anyway, right? But third point then, regarding on how their sites are still actually saying that there are regulations under their site. We think that regulation are there, yes, but it doesn't actually stop people from buying drugs like it's bread in the convenience store, right? The reality is that you can actually go into the pharmacy and then you say that I want to buy these drugs, and then you will get it because drugs is actually being advertised are most likely drugs that can actually public that can access, right? But B, we think that it's predatory for pharmacies to actually use the regulation to advertise the product like crazy. But C, we see that this is why government has to actually step in because they are actually the one that is having those kind of power to actually stop this kind of pharmacy to actually doing this kind of regulation. So proud to propose. Moving to my substantial thing then. First extension, why development or innovation in medical world would actually decrease because of the unbanned pharmaceutical advertising. Crystallize these pharmaceutical companies' interests. 2 points here. First, we think that they are very money oriented. They tend to be profit hungry in extent when they give their full effort to gain as much money as possible, which if we're debating under this motion, advertisement is one of the way, right? But secondly, they actually tend to attack so many vulnerable actors in this debate. Let's recharacterize then. Who are them? 3 more points. We think that elderly, they're actually most the one that has those kind of chronic conditions are more likely to actually face ongoing health challenges. They are faced with death. They are being faced with the end of their life. But B, kids, we think that they are prone to ads exactly because they're being fed again and again with the same thing without the not to mention that they are actually lack the cognitive maturity to critically evaluate this kind of advertisement. But see, the adults, it is actually already we explained on how the adults are being guilt-tripped on how if you don't buy your kids' meds, you are evil. On the other hand, how is the picturization of these ads? First, we think that ads often use fear-based messaging, meaning that they are actually using the entire anxiety feelings of these society have, that these people have to actually pursue them to buy this kind of product. If you have diseases, you are actually very likely to lead you to death. You need to buy these kind of drugs, right? But secondly, they tend to actually make it more relatable, in which that if they think that they are, I'm so like this, in which not only work for 1 or 2 groups, but they want to actually make it as much as people as possible to be relating to whatever disease that they're making on in their ads. This explains how big the likelihood for these people to be affected if these are continuously happen again and again, meaning that companies that are benefited even become more profit hungry because they see a chance to success, right? What will happen after these fucked up things? 4 analysis. A, pharmaceutical advertising will actually shift their focus from improving health to maximizing profit because they're actually in their comfort space right now. But B, because they want to make it as relatable as possible, they change their strategy, their fundamental job, into making things under this world more relatable and producing more medicine that is more relatable towards society. For example, like lifestyle medicine, they actually need like weight loss pills, right? For example, there are like actually a bunch of people that are experiencing, I'm sorry, like for example, eating disorder. They want to buy this weight loss pill again and again because they need these type of pills, right? But see, they don't see any benefit from doing researches under medication that is not relatable enough towards society, meaning that they see that these are not benefiting them because the research needs billions worth of money and the revenue and profit that they're gaining back are not that big anyway, especially with no likelihood existing on how their research are going to be successful. They chose to live under their comfort space where they are not going to do this type of research, where they could just attract consumers and live happily with their current financial freedom, for example. But D, even if the innovation still exists, but negative side cannot deny that the existence of these will be very small and narrow. What are the outcomes? 4 outcomes. First, no development and innovation because the interest does not even exist at the very first place with our previous analysis. But secondly, the moment they neglect this innovation to exist, we think that the morality of health
They're back already. Okay. Okay. All right then. All right. Thank you for that fine speech. Now, second negative. To continue the case for side negative.
Am I audible, Chair?
Yes.
Okay, hold on. Let me set up a timer. Thank you very much. Okay. I will start my speech on 3, 2, and 1. Panels, a quick point for the Prime Minister. Since the very beginning, their logic for the arguments they bring is false. They bring about how people are unaware of the dosage and the use of drugs. Logically speaking, if you want to buy a medicine, then of course you would search the function and the caution beforehand because it's a literal prerequisite of you drinking your medicine. I will drink my domperidone when I know how much I should drink it, when I know what's in it, because I see the dosage. People always do this, actually. Let's try to look at this motion, not shallowly like that, but let's see this motion. Guess what? Through a wider lens, right? How do we see this through a wider lens? We need to see through the individuals itself, through the industries itself, and in the government itself. This is important because if we do ban pharmaceutical advertising, we basically stray from liberalism itself because now the government has full reins on the medical industry by banning advertising itself, which would be the bread maker of any product inside of this world. Marketing is, of course, one of the greatest pillars. And as a second speaker, let me tell you why it's so detrimental in the government house to let this happen in my latter arguments. Okay, so basically, I'm going to re-emphasize the burdens again. First of all, how the status quo still allows proliferation and the progress of the medical industry and how it will be accessible. This was actually kind of set aside by the government side, which is really weird. But the opponent's hard burden is, why is the advertising of pharmaceutical products really bad? What do they offer aside from advertising pharmaceutical products? What they fail to explain is, how do they offer us things aside from advertising pharmaceutical products to get their fundings and etc. Right? Okay. Secondly, would their counter mechanism be better? Can it provide more innovation, proliferation, enough funding, and etc.? And I will tell you why exactly that completely fails. Now we'll move on to my rebuttals. First of all, government says and talks if all drugs is illusional because of flashy advertising, then go get mad at Aqua itself, right? Because Aqua also advertises flashily, and I don't see you trying to ban it. Secondly, not even knowing if these medical products will work or not. Okay, there is a check and balance of the FDA. There is a check and balance on many regulatory bodies, many regulatory entities to actually know if these products work or not, right? Advertisements actually try to allow proliferation of these drugs and actually allows much more of the testing to happen because it is actually inside of the competition and inside of the platform and industry itself. Okay, first of all, again, what opposition brings to the table? First of all, don't attack us for not tackling the characteristics, but instead evaluate yourself and try to tackle our main case. We already talked a lot about the things, even in the first speaker, but you guys do not want to touch it. Therefore, let me give you more. They keep saying how profit-oriented a company is. We said that even if they are profit-oriented, they still keep and protect their quality of the meds. Understand that DTC or direct-to-consumer exists, and this fosters a burden for a company to keep improving and fixing their meds, regardless of how profit-oriented they are, right? And secondly, when government says people want to survive and go to the hospital because it's better to go to a doctor and whatnot, right? First of all, what about doctors in rural areas? There are less doctors in rural areas, right? So of course, this will actually get rid of that argument. And secondly, we already said from the first speaker how yes, there may be doctors and pharmacists in rural areas, but they may not be the most up to date, which that is also our worst case scenario. But to also answer that, okay. Okay, I will move on to my arguments. First of all, let's see this world panels where pharmaceutical advertising is banned. Let's see what will happen, right? First of all, in the medical industry will definitely fall because without advertising itself, they are unable to sell their products. Marketing is the core pillar of the medical industry for most customers because most customers can actually know pharmaceutical products itself through public knowledge in TV, digital marketing, in their phones, in HaloDoc and whatnot. The question is, without marketing and advertising, how can the medical industry proliferate? More competition will happen in our house, which is good in advertising comparatively towards, of course, government house. Now people have a platform to actually promote their products, to actually stand against each other inside of the status quo. Company A, company B, pharma A and pharma B can be seen competing with each other, which also pushes innovation of the medical industry itself. Let's see our worst case then. Because there is economic liberalism itself, which is the basis for advertising, what happens is that the capitalist nature of medical companies itself will actually allow innovations to get more profit. So there is an incentive for both innovation and proliferation to be very high because that is their main goal through advertisement itself. So it actually pushes medical companies to actually proliferate and create more innovations and et cetera, rather than comparatively in the government house where advertising is just banned, right? The question is now for the government house is how the funding will work in their house, because it is very speculative as well, because subsidy from the government will not cut the industry that is so huge, that is pharma. Or secondly, from medical campaigns, it will not, of course, relatively be actually enough for the mega industry that is the pharma itself. How are you going to support the many medical pharmas that are still little as well, where they make their money from advertising their products mainly? Okay. Secondly, the individuals. People will not know which drugs to buy because all forms of advertisement will be banned by the government. They will not know to get domperidone over sucralfate for their GERD and etc. Even though domperidone is cheaper because of the competition in the market and it's advertised to be cheaper and actually still has the quality of products that is needed, which becomes a check and balance of cheapening products and actually still upholding quality and actually increasing quality through advertisements itself, right? To get a hand of customers, that becomes an incentive, right? This also allows more drugs to be used accessibly, unlike in banning advertisements itself, where individuals get less knowledge on what to buy, what is cheaper to buy, what is actually good quality, and etc. And yes, by the way, get rid of the good benefits that, let's say, HaloDoc gave to people through online means, because they also get profit and they advertise their products in the trade-off of actually helping so many people in the demographic to actually get over-the-counter drugs so much more effectively. Let government do that, because that is really, really stupid. The big harm that government says happens inside of advertising is that it harms through the advertisements will fool the public. Okay, then I will say, rather than banning advertisements, which has so many benefits, then just tighten the FDA where they can still promote and get funding for the more proliferation of drugs and actually ensure the safety of these individuals. In our house, it's a win-win. A big harm is about individuals well under knowledge as well, hence they will get harmed through the advertising itself, as government said. Aside from the overarching mechanism of tightening the FDA as a policy, which would get rid of all of the unexclusive problems inside of government house, it's better for us to put ads itself, because now humans can actually digest and try to distinct those and choose which ones are actually genuine medicine from pharmas. They will try see which one is more effective. They will try educate themselves, because there is a diverse options of medicine itself, rather than guess what, banning advertisements and allowing only one option, too big to fail pharmaceutical companies, for example, where it will allow individuals to just be spoon-fed by that one overarching pharma, because that's the only option, right? That is the only option, which increases the want for self-education itself. And secondly, they will have more options as well that they can suit their bodies, rather than cutting advertisements and getting rid of major diverse medicine from the pharma itself. We can also see from monopoly, there is free market in drugs, right? Free market in drugs increases feasibility for people to actually get it because of leveling up with the government, which balances the playing field. Rather than allowing the government to hold it fully, we can see this principally inside of the free market itself. But if the government holds and bans advertising, this insinuates that the government will take over, because how can these pharmcoms get money without advertising? These products to actually proliferate, right? This allows oligarchy to take over, where the powerful people inside of nations just use it to their own benefit, because predominantly that's what will happen. But compared to inside of the free market in our house, what happens is that there is a check and balance of companies competing with each other, and not only in the hands of the government, which allows more innovation and less monopoly itself through being able to advertise its products. And on the comparative, right? there's a lot of trade-offs that we can take, regardless of how advertisement looks like. The products have a standard. This is why BOPM exists within the code, even if the packaging is bait and there are genuine information that are being given by companies and consented in the government through the FDA and whatnot. The solutions are getting the information from doctors and professionals flips this narrative, right? And in the affirmative, the world of medicine are still biased anyway, and if you want to consult towards a professional, there is more turnover in the cost when in the status quo, not all people are privileged enough to consult every time they are sick. Let's not forget how doctors will promote and give recommendations towards one specific pharmaceuticals that will profit them at the end of the day from the pharmacy that actually intertwine with the hospitals itself. And that is why in the clashes of accessibility, the harm of the advertisement itself and the safety of the products, proliferation and innovation, that's why we win this case. And that is why we are very proud to oppose. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the fine speech. Now to continue the case for affirmative, I'd like to call upon third F. Here.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, hold on. Let me set my timer. Oh, and also disclaimer, I've had trouble regarding the connection. So if there's if I'm lagging or anything, please let me know through WhatsApp group. Okay. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think negative is asking too much in this debate, right? They're asking us to engage with their arguments and not sidestep it, while at the same time, they've never engaged with arguing government responsibility to protect the citizens. And moreover, on the health expenditure thing that my first and second has pushed to this debate several times, right? But anyways, here's how we're going to win this debate by 3 questions or indicators. Firstly, which side protects the customer interest and health more in addition to providing accessibility towards healthcare? Second, on which side has better government control through regulations to protect the public health? And thirdly, which side ends up with better research in the pharma industry as a whole, right? But before that, several clarifications. Firstly, my first already gave you a counter narrative from the very first, and I think she even spent the majority of her speech regarding the mechanism itself and how it will work, right? Let's remind the debate again. It's the fact that there's going to be these regulations in its development. It's going to be consulting with the Ministry of Health, with the doctors associate in that country, for example, right? Therefore, every logical gap, for example, is still going to be filled in beforehand, right? And we already provided to you the why this ban is strategic is so that the money that these pharmaceutical industries have can be used for the research. Why it's going to be better under our side of the house, right? When you're under your side of the house, you're just going to keep doing the marketing things, right? And not actually focusing on the research, because it's not the research that's going to be beneficial, that's going to be profiting for your side, it's the marketing, right? I'm going to get more into that in my classes later, right? And secondly, regarding their whole rural areas one-liners, I think this is very easily rebuttable by the fact that if they're so very isolated, then they're not going to be affected by the pharma industries at all, because they have traditional medicine, for example, that are way more healthier, way more effective. This debate shouldn't even include them in the first place, but I'm going to engage with the even if later on, right? And before going into the clashes once again, several responses. Firstly, we heard from the rest of the house regarding misinformation would not exist because people will search from TV what are the effects of the medicines, right? But we said that this is simply contradictory to their point with the fact that flashy advertising is the only way that these people will want to see it, right? The moment that you do not negate this fact that these flashy advertisements are still being allowed to happen, therefore these people are still not going to research for it, right? Maybe they are, but the very vulnerable people that we're talking about, those aspiring middle class or the lower class who simply don't have access to go on the internet because they need that they need that internet data to go Gojek, for example, right? They're not going to have that incentive to search, right? And not all people have the incentive to search on Google because they're being manipulated by so many ads. They're only going to choose the more splashy one, not the best one that's most suitable for their side of the house, for their side, for their individual, right? Rather than in our side of the house, we give you a better alternative because going to the apothecaries, the hospitals, for example, they are being educated immediately by the health, by the nakes, right? It's way more accessible to be informed directly because of public research like BPJS, in which is only enabled when government funding can actually be lessened regarding the health, in which is also benefit under ours they never engage with. Free internet doesn't exist for you to simply educate yourself. Secondly, This is like a really funny thing, but I just wonder about it just to make sure that it doesn't get credited. Regarding why not ban aqua, because the advertisement is really flashy, right? In what world is aqua harmful in high doses? You're bloated for sure if you drink too much, but you're not going to die of overdosing. And aqua doesn't guilt trip you on having to buy their product so that you can like be a better parent, for example, which is the case for Tempra, which like sells anti-demam drugs to kids, and they guilt trip their parents so that if they're not a good parent, if they don't buy it for their kids, and that their kids are going to die because of it, right? This is the sort of harm that we try to negate on the rest of the house. Thirdly, then, regarding check and balance of like the FDA, we said it's not about the quality of the medications, right? We say how these meds exist for the sake to cure people, like if it's being used in a wrong way, for example, but like the likelihood has already been explained on how FDA are like going to explain these things that happen, right? We see like there's still a logical gap. But anyways, moving on to the clashes then. Firstly, about the which side protects the customer interest and health more in addition to providing accessibility towards healthcare. Let's talk about their like point about customers needing transparency. They try to respond to you by saying that, oh, companies evaluate from the ads and the customer reviews, and therefore like this is what shows the transparency, right? But understand, exactly because they want to make the ads flashy, they're only taking the good reviews, right? They're not going to put Raffi Ahmad in an advertisement and say that, oh, hey, Oskadon is really good. There's only like 1 to 2 people whose mothers died because they use this. But don't worry about that, right? People are not going to buy that. Transparency is not going to exist in ads that are made to promote the good stuff only. We said a version of transparency negative is defending as false. It doesn't exist, right? The comparative on the rest of the house where you need transparency is because you're actually incentivized to ask a health, like someone who's certified in the health industry, like apothecary or like the doctors, and that you get more educated, right? Therefore, we also co-opt that benefit of education on the rest of the house, right? Let's also talk about what they said about flashy ad is the only way to get customers to see like hard to swallow truths. First, we don't know what these hard to swallow truths are, right? Negative never characterized to us. But anyways, one, flashy good because you can make rural people digest the hard to swallow truth is that I think if they don't think far enough to consider medical journals, they're also unlikely to want to scroll through the terms and conditions fine print, right? They're first try to respond that this is a matter of visibility, yet their regulations don't mention anything about matter of visibility, right? This also contradicts their point regarding the moment the hard to swallow information is being more highlighted. It's no longer flashy, right? It's too much text. People don't want to see it. People no longer want to like use this check and balance measures. So we say that even if you have better regulations somewhat under this of the house, in which they never explain, it's still not going to be effective, right? And we said that if like people in rural areas looking at online sources are incredible, we say that the journals are online sources as well, right? So we're really confused as to what they're trying to say in this, right? We go to the second clash then. So like basically we win in that first clash. In the second clash, regarding which side had better like government control through regulations to protect public health, there's no engagement regarding this, right? Fatal mistake because they never talk about the we in this actor debate. The negative, let's put on their glasses and engage, which is technically too late for a third to pull a pahlawan kasiyangan move, right? Regarding better regulations, A, we don't see what kind of measures to improve the regulation under this of the house, right? And second, we already proved to you that there is no control the moment that these like ads are already out and like you take them back because it's harmful, for example, people are already getting hurt. Remember those few moments where cough syrups were not able to be like distributed because like a few kids got their ginjal hurt, for example, right? This is the kind of thing that's going to happen under the house, right? And secondly, regarding government absolute control, we say first, it's not true because even in apothec, you're still going to ask for the comparison, right? Like, therefore, there's still going to be like some control that is not under the government. But second, even if it's absolute, we bite the bullet and say that it's okay. It's government responsibility, right? It's the one having to bear the heavier expenditure on health. It's the government, they have to use the money for infrastructures like building hospitals and stuff, right? They have the right to intervene, right? We say that this doesn't negate the point. And then on the last clash then, which side end up with better research and pharma industry? Just going to speed through this. Firstly, on like ad revenue going into research, we said that when something gets really lucrative, they're not going to channel it to something else. They're going to keep doing it because that's what makes the money come in, right? You have better research, but the wrong research. You have research on social media engagement instead of the drugs. And like even on like the overarching pharma and oligarchy point, again, firstly, competition based on prices will still exist. And secondly, if the government FDA will somehow favor one corporation over the other, this cannot happen because this ban applies to all corporations, right? If it's like if there's going to be one corporation that's going to be benefiting like so much more over this, people are going to notice because this ban is in the form of legislation. People are going to monitor it, right? Whatever the government does is going to be monitored, right? And then again, regarding like on how this research is going to like translate into better economy and talking about China and COVID, for example, what happens is that you actually make like the more flashier the ads got, the more people got suspicious. People think that they actually get more racist and blame it as the Chinese making this virus that they can get lucrative in the industry, right? We said that in any cases whatsoever, it's simply so bad under the side of the house, and we already provided to you a better counter narrative. So proud to affirm.
Thank you for that fine speech. Now to continue the case for side negative, I'd like to call upon third negative speaker. Here.
Check, am I clear and audible?
Yes, you are.
Setting up my timer, pronounce her, she, her, starting in 3, 2, and 1. If the trade-off is for improving and making the pharmaceuticals serve the health of the people to be better, we would take it. Affirmative whole case stand in the characterization that are not logical towards the status quo and how until now they still hasn't given us any alternative on how the pharmaceutical will be distributed in their side of the house other than seeking info from professionals, which is what my previous speaker has already rebutted at the end of the day. Therefore, we are proud to oppose. In order to champion this debate, there will be two questions here. First of all, in the weighing of the mechanism and where should it be justified or not, and second, which side of the house are able to benefit the actors better. 3 courses of action in the speech then. Firstly, I'm going to repoint the framing that this debate stands on. Second, a few points of rebuttals, and third, clashes, right? Repointing the framing here. I don't think I need to say this again. Basically, it's about justification and the weighing of impact because it is a practical motion after all. But then let me point out affirmative. They have less engagement towards our main case and focus on characterizing their actor. If the characterization is good, then no problem. But we are still able to play within your case and flip it around so panels no major checkpoint to credit affirmative in this debate. But the rebuttals then. If they worry so much about, for example, regulation flaws and the misleading ads, my first speaker has already said that there's the power of the media and ads, right? There's social media everywhere. There's even lots of website that allows you to give feedback. And there's lots of foundation that allows you to protest towards these kind of like companies itself, right? Because advertisement set up an expectation for consumers, and if they fail to leave a good stain, then people will protest. By people speaking out, by people protesting it, it creates a major likelihood to either withdraw their product or fixing it at the end of the day. So we cannot credit affirmative by them saying that we have no likelihood at the end of the day, right? And also, there's logical fallacy for FDA, which is really weird because my second speaker has said that FDA is the regulatory entity that actually not just ensures safety, but the effectivity of the drugs itself. So tightening it in our house will be much more better rather than just getting rid of advertisement itself because it allows so much in the trade-off. Let's just move on to the question. On a Clash A justification, there will be 3 points here. First of all, in the accessibility itself, government came to this debate and say that, oh, they're so money oriented that we should get rid of the apps and how we will get better budget allocation. But then the budget is from where they have not given us any solution, and how they will say that, oh, there's healthcare campaigns that don't cut for the whole mega industry, right? Our case then, we bring about 4 things here. First of all, how we can get more accessibility on the our side of the house because we're allowing the main pillar of advertising, which is they get profit proliferate, right? Second of all, how the competition to cheapen the price, but it still upholds quality to increase customer. People have the basic knowledge that even if it's cheap, but if it's bad, they will not buy it. Even if it's a bit pricey, but if it's for the sake of your health, then people will opt in and save money or even invest their money within the health system itself, right? People are not stupid like what affirmative have been trying to say since the very beginning. Third of all, it does not answer the burden of how will it work. They said they keep talking about their second speaker keeps bringing about how there's more budget allocation, more budget wise, and so on. But then where do they get the main budget from, right? Because understand that this kind of budget came from the consumers itself because medicines are being consumed by society itself. So therefore, where will you get your money? But then they talk about how, but then we already give you like, for example, how in the world of medicine itself, government don't give you funding that are so major towards you not going to get a profit oriented, right? If then the government is going to, for example, give you fundings, there wouldn't be profit-oriented companies at the end of the day. So therefore, there's no getaway, there's no backaway for them to actually give us any solutions on how then they will get this budget allocation that they bring, right? But then in the second point about the harm of the advertisement itself and the safety of the products, they talk about how it is very, very untransparent. It'll fool people by their packaging and how people not knowing what to consume and how to consume them, right? This is very, very easy to tackle because three things. First of all, self-education is is already developed in the status quo. There's social media, there's websites everywhere, right? So search for it, educate yourself. Second of all, then regulate the FDA more. There's already a check and balance against transparency, but then they haven't even touched those ideas, right? And third of all, secondly, there are cases where you have to ask for a doctor, you have to go to professionals. That is way better. You have to go to pharmacy. But then we already told you from the very first speaker that there is now a clear law that prevent doctor to not be affiliated with a certain type of medicine, right? So in the world of medicine, even doctors are biased when it comes to medicine and what they sell and what they promote, but they still haven't tackled those ideas. The third point then about the proliferation and like the improvement itself, right? They haven't bring anything about this and they haven't even tackled anything about this. But then let me rephrase it, right? Our side of the house, we bring more innovation and incentive for profit. We bring a more stable platform in industry because why? Because there's the trade-off mechanism, right? Because we have the improvement for money, we have the funds, so therefore companies are interested and companies are investing in a more better quality itself, so it'll make this cycle even goes on even further, right? But moving on to the second clashes then about the actual interest itself, they serve about basically is the same thing from the first and the third speaker. They talk about how budget allocation, how advertisement, how people cannot see it in a more wiser way and cannot use the drugs or the medicine in a more wiser way. But then we bring a lot of things that they still haven't tackled. Two things here. First of all, for the consumers, we talk about it will make a pedestal of communication. We think that if we want to give back to society, then society needs to talk to us as a company, as a field itself, right? Therefore, on the other side of the house, we bring more communication going on because there is give and take feedback. There is like protest. There is like if the product is bad, then you can just protest it. But if the product is good, then you will promote it at the end of the day, right? And second of all, we talk about how there is more alternative towards more information. We're saying that people are smart enough when they know that they know that their diseases are very, very, for example, are very, very prone towards them getting into sensitive, like them being afraid of dying and so on. They will go, of course, to the doctor. But then like pharmaceuticals that sells for coughing, for flu, and so on. These kind of things are pharmaceuticals as well. So therefore, it is justified to bring in this debate. These kind of advertisement, it is still okay in the pharmacy because people know which type of medicine to consume because they search for it beforehand. They're gonna buy it at the end of the day, right? And second of all, for the company in the major scope of society, we bring about basically more innovation, but they still hasn't tackled those until the end of the debate. They I think they're afraid to touch these kind of things because they don't have any ideal way to how then will they get more innovation and the likelihood of people of company to make their products better on the other side of the house because there is no stability, there is no punishment for this kind of companies under the house. So even if they make a bad product, even if they're profit oriented, then what, right? But at least under our side of the house, we go to their case and saying that okay, let's just take it, right? Even if a company is profit oriented, but then they still have the push, they still have the pressure to make their product good. So until they do the debate, until all of the spectrum, we are so proud to take this debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that fine speech. Now to close the case for negative, I'd like to call upon the negative reply. Here.
Okay, hold on. Starting my reply speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels see how their world leaves consumers misinformed, not up to date, and it's harder for pharmaceutical companies to grow because of the lack of public health knowledge and support. Now, to win this debate, I would like to give two clear clashes on first, which side understands the status quo better, and secondly, which side benefits each actors more. First clash. So proposition suggests how without ads it is still functional because sick people have this survival incentive to seek help from like hospitals and pharmacies who will then provide reliable information. And they also say how pharmaceutical companies are profit oriented so that it will be harmful. Well, this is how opposition have tackled this from the very beginning. We have answered that yes, people will go to hospital, sure, but what about the countless other people who are like less fortunate, who have to self-medicate, but they do not know which one to buy because healthcare, sadly, is not accessible. So yes, maybe the ad is flashy, but maybe that is how so the public can easily digest it. And okay, sure, if they do go to a hospital like they're able and then their doctor who is so passionate about his work is there. Sure, but then is that doctor always up to date, especially when newer drugs are only served via like journals? And let's not forget that how in the world of medicine, even doctors are biased when it comes to medicine. So people cannot just rely on doctors for like information, especially when there is like no clear law that prevents doctor to not be affiliated with a certain type of medicine. So let's see what they lack. How then, without those super scary flashy ad, will less educated people who need to self-medicate know which one to use? And they keep saying no, people in rural areas can still read journals through like online resources. But really, if you said they will not read ads that have too many text, then how will they want to read journals then? Their rebuttals failed and our case wins this clash. Now onto my second clash on which side benefits the pharmaceutical company and the consumers more. Proposition suggests that since companies are profit oriented, then they do not care for the consumer. So it affects negatively on both sides, in which we acknowledge and we understand this. Yeah, they are in the end businesses and they are undoubtedly like profit oriented. But like with advertising, people will be pushed to like buy when they have a little fever. Sure, but this drive of profit is how then they will be able to one, invest drug development and research, especially because developing new drugs are super expensive and risky, right? But this is exactly why they need this financial cushion, because without it, then companies will not want to take on these high risks. So this is how the profits are actually needed. And secondly, even if they are super profit oriented, there are mechanisms and regulations, right, that make sure that their social responsibilities are fulfilled in the end of the day. Like the FDA, which my second speaker has said, which not only oversees the safety of the drugs, but also how it is advertised and how it is priced. Lastly, their case on profiting creates overdose. Let's see what our side says about this. We say that people cannot just waltz into a pharmacy and then buy a full truckload of paracetamol, right? Especially when most drugs that are prone to misuse need doctor's note. And overdosing does not come from that profit-oriented company, but because of the lack of education when they are not aware. This exists regardless of the company being profit-oriented or not. This is why in our house we tackle everything by creating this mechanism that we want to tighten the FDA more rather than banning advertisement as a whole. Me, Archie, and Vio urges you to judges to see that we are the house that tackles this problem much more holistically than the government house. Stand for opposition, stand for an innovative and secure medical industry. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that fine speech. Now to close the case for side affirmative and the debate as a whole, I'd like to call upon the affirmative reply. Here.
Hi, assuming I'm still audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Okay. Wait. Set my timer. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Judge realized that the whole negative whole case is all over the place. It's unrealistic, too much wishful thinking, and most of them are delusional and full of assumptions. Negative never listened to us. They're debating with their own imaginary opponent. When we never said that people are going to read journals. They're actually the one who said that which is the justification to why flashy and that's misleading is okay under their side of the house. We have started the debate on our mechanism that is very crystal clear. It's their side that never actually tell us the step by step on how this regulation will actually be better. is the bigger fine print, is giving them fines. What? All of them accusation are actually projections, right? Let's address how the deadlock looks like here. First, negative is actually telling you that public health knowledge is lacking, whereas affirmation have actually already touched not only on how awareness will actually going to be better because you're not as vulnerable as to leading misinformation, but you also champion on government responsibility to prevent the misuse of drugs, which is a more tangible net benefit because government can actually allocate that money to actually would have been used to create antibiotics that are stronger to deal with mutated virus, to actually champion education, better infrastructure, better reach towards the rural citizen, which my third already told you that is relevant in this debate because they are actually that isolated. Big pharma is not going to be affected them, right? But secondly, even if doctors have actually those kind of evaluation with some certain drugs, it is going to be actually much worse under this side of the house because it's actually a code at the ads that they actually see on the internet. It is actually going to be much harder for them to seek out for the other options. It contradicts their own point. Understand that the parameter of this debate, the parameter of accessible health is not about ads, but the availability of the drugs and the education and minimizing amount of misinformation. This is how we win this debate, right? Two clashes under my speech. First clash, regarding awareness versus misinformation, but secondly regarding development in medical. First clash then, regarding awareness versus misinformation. These are the main point that we're discussing under this debate about how affirmative does not want misinformation addiction to happen, meanwhile negative tries to pursue that at least awareness of these type of meds exist, right? First, what we bring under this debate is that advertisements are predatory and feeding misinformation. How they engage. They saying that that's not true. That's just a way for people to know its existence. Their response is exactly why they lose the debate because we already give a clear characterization analysis on how predatory ads are. They're short, flashy, sugarcoating everything with fancy words, with empty promises, telling you to buy drug and now and you'll get cured. Meaning that ads they're not to give some information or education. They're there to sell a product, which most people that are consumers in the debate are people who are unaware of medical work, right? But B, they say that misinformation would happen because they still have to search it on Google anyway. No, we say that it's not true because literally we have already told you that people will only know you from the ads, right? We also we also responded that even if that's true, privileged people can do this, but not the general public, especially not with their whole argument about the rural areas. Funny how they contradict their own point, huh? Really just show you that you cannot trust the negative side. But secondly, regarding how these vulnerable people are easier to manipulate since they don't actually have enough resources to secure themselves from the misinformation and they're threatened with bunch of anxieties coming from that. That's right. But secondly, what they bring under this debate, they want awareness to exist where people don't actually know what pharmas buy to buy under our set of house, right? Their points have fallen. We have successfully broke their points by first. We already set in our mechanization that discussion still exists, recommendation from doctors still exists, and even if they can't afford it, we think that most people can still afford going to doctors since public resources still exist. But let's play in their case. We think that it's okay because testimonies from people using drugs, words of mouth, people will actually be better awareness because exactly they're not eating up misinformation and gatekeeping those kind of information done by farmers through ads. They seek what other people know, meaning that there will be better education and because it's better public health as well, right? But secondly, we think that information from medical professionals that aren't profit oriented are way more trustable since they spent years in pursuing those kind of education, right? The weighing is simple. The deadlock are regarding privilege, right? We say that we're still winning the tipping point under privilege because under affirmative, you could simply go towards the doctor that is still accessible anyway, exactly because PPDS Puskesmas still exists, in which it is exclusive towards all class. The concern under negative side regarding awareness is gone. Awareness still exists under our side, but under negative side, phone, free internet, the incentive to educate yourself still haven't actually exist because they're not from those rural areas anyway, right? But second clash regarding development in medical, we come to the debate by saying development wouldn't exist under this side because they tend to making medicine more relatable. And secondly, we provide you a better alternative on how we're getting this kind of things to actually campaign, and they never actually engaged to that. So proud to propose.
All right, thank you for that fan speech, and thank you everyone. It was a great debate. Congratulations once again for making it to the Novice semifinal.